Hey everybody, very bisexual, like and subscribe. All right, if you like nudity, male nudity, I have Patreon. It's my Patreon, full frontal nudity. Go check it out. All right, so today we're going to be looking into something actually quite fascinating. I just was looking into like topics of stuff to talk about, and I actually stumbled upon this one. All right, so what is voyeurism and exhibitionism? Is exhibitionism. All right, so what's the difference between? Is there a difference? Yes, there is, and this is actually quite fascinating. Okay, now reading on this is voyeurism involves. All right, voyeurism voyeurism involves sexual arousal. Sexual arousal from watching others. Okay, while exhibitionism involves sexual arousal from being observed. I find that actually quite fascinating. I thought that was really cool. And also, I forgot to put my light on. All right. With consent and context determining whether these behaviors are healthy or disordered. All right, so a lot of people might think that this is kind of like not correct in its form, or people might have a problem with it. But voyeurism doesn't really necessarily mean, looking into other people's houses and stuff like that. Voyeurism just means, like watching your significant other do certain things or something like that. You know what I mean? Like voyeurism is the sexual interest in or practice, the practice of observing others engage in intimate behaviors. So, that kind of means like, there's consent that, the person that you're observing actually knows you're there. You're not hiding in a closet, so it's kind of like you're there, right? So this could be engaging in intimate behavior such as undressing or sexual activities. It could be one or the other. Often without their knowledge or consent to the act itself being sexualized. Now that becomes not right, right? It's perfectly fine if people know you're there and they consent to it, but then it quickly turns into something completely different when the people aren't aware of it. That's when it becomes a problem. Historically, voyeurism or voyeurs were sometimes referred as peeping toms, right? So this is that would be in the consent and in the form of the non-consensual voyeurism, the peeping tom, because that refers to somebody that is there without the knowledge of the other people, which that's where it becomes the problem. But the consensual voyeurism, where people know that you're actually watching and that you have their consent to watch, well, that's where the lines are kind of like crisscrossed, and that's when it becomes fine, with people knowing that you're there. And the behaviors is classified as paraphilia in the BSM. If it causes distress, interpersonal dysfunction, interpersonal difficulty, or involves acting on urges in non-consensually. Yeah, well, that's what I kind of said. It becomes a problem when people aren't aware of it or don't consent to it. But if people know that you're there and they consent to it, then it's perfectly fine. You know, prevalence and demographic. Research indicates that these behaviors are relatively common in fantasy form. I would think that every single kink is all lives in fantasy. Now you can fantasize about pretty much anything, but whether or not you act on those fantasies, whether it's harmful or not, that's when it becomes from being not a problem to being a problem. It's acting on fantasies that are not really socially acceptable. Research indicates that these behaviors are relatively common in fantasy form. Okay, a study of 2,400 Swedes, like Swedish people, found that 3.1% reported arousal from exposing themselves to strangers, with men more likely to be exhibitionists. Well, men are historically more perverted than women in a sense. But there are a lot of perverted women out there that are just as bad as men. So, but I think that men are more psychologically dirty-minded, even though there's a lot of dirty-minded women out there as well. So men have been reported to be more aroused when exposing themselves to strangers. With men, I report arousal from like spying on others, but that's voyeurism. Except if it's spying would be considered non-consensual voyeurism, while not spying would be consensual voyeurism. Because if people know you're voyeurisming, you're not spying. Frequent pornography use a strong predictor of voyeuristic tendencies, and both voyeurs and exhibitionists tend to be more sexually active overall. Well, yeah, if it's pornography, it's gonna be sexualized or sexually sexual. You know what I mean? Consent and legal considerations, but I'm pretty sure that I've already explain this in the consent form, if people have to consent, but I'll just read this regardless, see if my premonitions were correct. I'm not good with words, especially big ones. The key distinction between healthy sexual expression and disorder lies in consent. All right, there we go. Voyeurism and exhibitionism become offenses when the observed person has not consented, making the behavior non-consensual and illegal in most jurisdictions. And that's what I said about, you have to have consent. If it's consensual, it's fine. If it's not, then it's not fine. Controversy, consensual voyeurism, and exhibitionism, such as in sex club, nude beaches, or festivals like Mardi Gras and Fantasy Fest, are socially accepted and legal permission in those countries. Well, yeah, if you're being like sexual, or if you're, topless in public around 700 people, and people are going to be looking at you, well, yeah, if you're going to take your top off in the middle of the street with 500 people, then I would think that you would know would be consensual. You know that people are going to be looking and watching, looking or seeing you. I mean, that's kind of like common sense right there. But psychological and clinical aspects. I like the psychology of things. I like that. I think that's pretty cool. Right. Both behaviors can exist on the spectrum. When compulsive or driven, they may resemble addictive patterns leading to distress, relationship issues, or legal consequences. Treatment for problematic voyeurism or exhibitionism focuses on restoring healthy sexual choice, managing compulsive urges, and providing behavioral tools to prevent offending behaviors. Key differences. Voyeurism, sexual arousal from watching others, often secretly. Satisfaction comes from observing rather than being observed, as we've already went through that. Exhibitionism, sexual arousal from being seen. Satisfaction comes from drawing attention to oneself, ideally in consensual context. Both behaviors are common in sexual fantasies and can coexist in consensual sexual play. But non-consensual acts are considered sexual offenses. We've already gone through that. Understanding the role of consent, context, and compulsivity is essentially in distinguishing healthy sexual expression from disorder. Like that was the whole thing about it. Also, what do you guys think about the whole thing? Do you agree with what I said, or do you disagree with what I've said? Let me know, and hope to hear from you. Hope to catch you in the comments. See you later.